Dr. Malcolm Greene prided himself on two things: his towering intellect and his towering arrogance. At 52, she was the most feared professor on campus, a legend of mathematics whose lectures were packed not because students loved him, but because they were terrified to miss them. Rumor said he once made a graduate student cry by correcting him with only silence and a stare. So when a new janitor appeared on campus, a quiet, brown-skinned single father named Evan Brooks, Malcolm barely glanced at him. Evan mopped the marble floors outside the math department every evening, humming softly to himself while professors debated theories. He had no business understanding, or at least that's what everyone assumed. But destiny has a habit of creeping into the smallest cracks. One evening, Malcolm was holding a small gathering of elite mathematicians from across the state, a private seminar where he presented what he called the unsolvable, Joule, an equation he had worked on for over 12 years, a knot of variables wrapped around irrational numbers, woven with cryptic symbols that made even the brightest minds in the room shift uncomfortably. As Malcolm scribbled the final line across the board, he smirked. "I challenge anyone here to solve it," he said. "In fact," he paused for dramatic effect, "solve this equation, and I'll marry you." The professors laughed. The students laughed. The equation looked like something an alien civilization would leave behind. Malcolm basked in the admiration. But in the far corner of the lecture hall, kneeling by the trash bin, Evan wasn't laughing. He was staring, really staring at the board. He stood slowly, mop in hand, eyes fixed. Malcolm noticed him and frowned. "You there," he snapped. "This isn't a spectacle for the staff. Continue your cleaning." Evan didn't reply. He walked closer, not out of defiance, but curiosity, like a man drawn by a melody only he could hear. The room grew uneasy. "Do you understand what's written here?" one professor asked mockingly. Evan didn't look at him. "Yes." The laughter returned, louder this time. Malcolm's lips curled. "Oh? And what exactly do you understand?" Evan hesitated, then said softly, "That you use the wrong sign in the third derivative." The room went silent. Malcolm's face drained of color. He turned sharply toward the board. Impossible. He checked the line Evan mentioned and felt his stomach fall. It was true. "You solved nothing," Malcolm barked, trying to recover. "Noticing a sign error doesn't mean you comprehend the equation." Evan inhaled deeply. "May I try?" A wave of gasps filled the room. "Try? Try this?" Malcolm narrowed his eyes. He expected nothing more than a humiliating collapse, a janitor scribbling random nonsense before they all burst into laughter. "Go ahead," he said coldly, stepping aside. Evan put down the mop and picked up the chalk. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He wrote with slow, deliberate strokes, as if guided by something ancient and familiar. Line after line unfolded like a blooming flower. Whispered murmurs filled the hall. Chairs scraped as professors leaned forward. Evan reached the midpoint of the board. One mathematician stood up. "My God!" Another clutched his head. "Is he using nonlinear symmetry reduction?" Malcolm's pulse hammered in his ears. Evan kept writing. When he reached the final line, he circled the answer, set the chalk down and stepped back. "There," he said simply. "That should solve your equation." The hall erupted into chaos. "He solved it. This is impossible." "That solution. It's elegant." "Who are you?" Malcolm stepped closer, breath shaky. He scanned each line. No errors, no missteps, no cheats. It was perfect. A solution that had eluded him for 12 years, solved in under 30 minutes by a janitor. His pride cracked like thin glass. "You," he sputtered. How did you learn mathematics?" Evan wiped chalk from his hands. "I never learned formally. My mother taught me what she could before she died. After that, books. Lots of books from the library. Math was the only thing that made sense when the world didn't." The room stared at him as if he had risen from the dead. Malcolm felt humiliated and strangely intrigued. But then he remembered his own words. "Solve this equation and I'll marry you." The entire room remembered too. A wave of delighted whispers swept across the hall. "Professor, he solved it. You promised to marry him. Are you going to propose to the janitor?" Evan chuckled awkwardly. "Please forget that. I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I just couldn't help myself. But Malcolm raised a hand. Not so fast. He walked up to Evan, studying him as though he were a rare artifact. You solved the equation? Yes, Malcolm said slowly. But marriage is out of the question. The room deflated with disappointment. However, Malcolm continued, I'm offering you something else, something far more appropriate for your abilities. Evan frowned. What do you mean? My personal research fellowship. I want you to work under me. Train with me. Learn properly. You could be one of the greatest mathematicians alive. The hall buzzed again. Evan blinked in disbelief. Professor, I'm just a janitor. I didn't finish college. Then finish it here, Malcolm said. I will sponsor your tuition, your housing, everything. Evan's throat tightened. I have a daughter, Lily, she's 6. I can't afford to stop working. Malcolm hesitated, then sighed. Fine, I will cover her expenses too, but you must promise me something. What's that? That you never waste a gift like yours again. Evan's eyes glistened. I promise. Evan became the talk of campus. From janitor to prodigy, students whispered when he walked by. Some admired him, others mocked him, saying he wasn't real academia material. A few professors grew resentful, especially Malcolm's longtime rival, Dr. Henry Lawson, who saw Evan as a threat, a living insult to their years of study. One night, Lawson cornered Evan in the library. You don't belong here, Lawson hissed. You think solving one problem makes you a genius? You're a lucky guesser with a mop. Evan stayed calm. I don't want trouble. But Lawson did, and trouble came. The next week, Evan was accused of cheating, of secretly taking pictures of Malcolm's unpublished work, of stealing ideas, of plagiarizing. It all spiraled into a formal disciplinary hearing. Malcolm was furious, not at Evan, but at whoever dared suggest such nonsense. During the hearing, Lawson presented evidence, fabricated notes, and doctored equations. Evan sat expressionless, until Malcolm rose slowly from his seat. Dr. Lawson, he said coldly, do you know what I find fascinating? The handwriting on these documents. He held up the forged papers. Is identical to yours. The room gasped. Lawson turned pale. Malcolm continued. And more importantly, Evan's solution style is entirely unique. I couldn't replicate it, and neither could any professor here. Only one person could, Evan. The board erupted. Lawson was dismissed from the hearing. Evan was cleared. And for the first time, Evan saw Malcolm not as a prideful professor, but as an ally. The most unexpected moment. One evening, after their research session, Malcolm sat staring at Evan with a strange expression. You know, Malcolm said, when I joked about marriage, it was meant to mock. But after these months, I realized something. Evan stiffened. Sir? Malcolm chuckled softly. Relax, I'm not proposing. Then he paused. But I want to ask you something important. What is it? Why didn't you ever pursue mathematics? You have a mind sharper than anyone I've seen. Evan looked down. When Lily's mother died, I had no money, no support. I had to take whatever job I could to feed my daughter. I didn't have the luxury to dream. Malcolm's voice softened. You do now? Evan's eyes watered. Thank you, he whispered. You changed my life. Malcolm shook his head. No, Evan, you changed mine. 1 year later, at a national mathematics conference, Malcolm was invited to present groundbreaking work. But instead of stepping to the podium, he turned to the audience and declared, this research was not done by me. It was done by someone far more deserving of your respect. He called Evan to the stage. The hall erupted with applause as Evan walked slowly, nervously holding Lily's hand. Malcolm whispered as Evan passed him, remember the deal? Solve the equation and I'd marry you. Evan laughed awkwardly. You're not... Malcolm smiled mischievously. No, but someone else is. He stepped aside, and Evan froze. Standing at the edge of the stage was Amelia, Malcolm's brilliant niece, a professor herself, smiling shyly. She had admired Evan since the day he solved the impossible. And Evan realized, not all equations are written on a chalkboard. Some are written in destiny.